Hello and welcome back to another Walking Dead Rewrites, and today we'll be doing part 2 of Season 10. Where we left off in part 1, Sadiq has been killed by Dante, Carl and his group went over to the Whisperer border to take out the walkers but fell into a trap. Eugene has met a woman over the radio, and Andrea has gone off with Virgil to go and find weapons. Major characters like Carol, Rosita and Magna are already dead, but Carl, Andrea and Jesus are still around. If you want to find out how all this happened and more, click on the icon in the top right corner to go to my rewrites playlist so you can see all the previous rewrite videos. And with that out of the way, let's jump right into my rewrites. Episode 6 picks up with Carl, Daryl, Jesus, Jerry, Kelly, Connie, and Aaron and Yumiko in the cave trying to get their bearings and find a way out. Jesus takes charge with the help of Aaron, and the two start planning an escape while Carl stands and stares looking up at Alpha. Alpha smiles before leaving the cave, and Carl continues to stare, retreating to his mind, furious that he fell for her trap. It takes Daryl to shake Carl to get Carl back in the moment. The situation gets worse, however, as some walkers are variants and they start to climb up on the rocks. Kelly, Connie and Yumiko, with the help of Jesus, try and hold them off, but there are too many and the walkers start pushing them back towards the edge. Kelly is then grabbed and is pulled towards the walkers and is about to be bitten, but Aaron saves her and kills the walker with his mace arm. Jesus then spots a way forward, however it involves jumping over the walkers on the rocks. Kelly, Connie and Jerry seem hesitant about this though, but Jesus and Daryl assure them that it is okay and Jesus leads the way. Jesus easily and quickly makes it over. Daryl then makes Carl go second. Things start to get worse, however, with the variants, and Daryl is forced to make everyone speed up. Next over is Yumiko, and now Kelly, who is worried about the variants in the horde, and she refuses to cross. Daryl then talks to Kelly, saying she has to go because they have no choice. Connie then steps in and reassures her. The two then agree to go together, with Daryl covering them with his crossbow. Once the two are over safe, Daryl goes next, and Jerry and Aaron are the only two left holding the line. They soon follow Daryl and cross. However, while crossing, Jerry is grabbed and is pulled into the horde. Jerry then screams as the walkers start to swarm onto his legs, and Aaron tries to get the walkers' attention by making as much noise as possible. Jerry then attempts to use all of his strength and pulls himself back up onto the rocks. The two then continue crossing, and once on the other side, Jesus runs over to go and check on Aaron and Jerry, and everyone tries to see if Jerry was bit, but he brushes them off and continues on, pissed at the situation. Then cut over to Sadiq laying dead on his home floor. The camera pans out and Dante is gone. Sadiq then turns and gets up and leaves the building as the door was left open. Scott, an Alexandrian, is on his porch, drinking and nearly half asleep. Before he has time to notice the noises and be able to get up, Sadiq pounces on him and goes for his neck. Scott is then bitten and screams and alerts everyone in the surrounding houses. Sadiq is then pulled off and put down by Laura. Back at the Whisperer camp, and Alpha returns and calls a meeting with Beta and Gamma. They come over and she tells them that the group are looking for the horde. Alpha then orders actions for both Beta and Gamma. Gamma is ordered to head to the border and to find out where they got in, and Beta is ordered to increase patrols around the region. Cut over to the cave where Jesus is looking for a way out with Aaron. The two are talking about the situation, and Aaron seems a little distant from Jesus and is only focusing on the task at hand. Jesus stops Aaron and tries to ask him about what happened. He mentions how they were about to start life together, but then Aaron suddenly moved back to Alexandria and cut all contact with him. Aaron then avoids the question by using Finding Wind to move on the conversation. The group are then attacked by Whisperers, but they are able to quickly fight them off. Kelly asks where did they come from, and Jerry points out a sign. The group follow the sign deeper into the cave as things get darker and tighter. Back at the Whisperer camp, and Alpha confronts Negan about the spy. She accuses him of being the spy, Alpha then circles Negan and says to him that it's very convenient. As soon as he joins, they know where the horde is. She then holds a knife to Negan's throat, and Negan tells her that she is looking at the wrong guy. He doesn't even know where the horde is himself. How can it be him? And she needs to hear him out. Negan then tells Alpha that it has to be Gamma. She is close enough to Alpha to know where the horde is, but also close enough to the border to be able to be got at by the survivors. Alpha's knife then tightens on Negan's throat, and Negan shouts he can prove it. Give him time, and if she does not return, it's clearly Gamma. And if Gamma does return, Alpha can just kill him. Alpha then pauses for a moment and leaves, sparing Negan. Cut back to the caves, and the group continue down. The cave is getting darker and tighter, and Jerry is starting to struggle to travel through these chasms. Jerry then starts to fall back and then collapses. Yumiko calls out to everyone, and almost everyone comes back, but Carl does not, and Daryl has to stop him physically and tells him that Alpha can wait and focus on now. Carl tries to say that he will scout out ahead, and Daryl has enough and tells him that enough is enough and pulls him back. Everyone then gathers around Jerry, and they notice that there is a blood mark on his leg and he's bleeding quite a lot. Daryl then asks Aaron if he can make sure Carl doesn't bolt, and he goes to check on Jerry, and they notice a massive bite on the back of his leg just above his right knee. Daryl tries to get Ray to amputate, but Jerry stops him, as so does Jesus, and they tell him that if he gets amputated currently, he will bleed out, and they need a more sterile area because if he survives bleeding out, he will then die from an infection. Jesus then also tells Daryl that if they amputate Jerry now, there's no way they'll be able to get him out, as Jerry needs to be able to walk somewhat to be able to help everyone out. Connie and Kelly then hold Jerry's hand as Daryl tries to tell Jerry sorry. Jerry then tells him it is okay and there's worse ways to go. And he tries to lighten up the mood by saying that at least he is surrounded by his friends. Jesus then asks Jerry if he is okay to continue, and he tries to help Jerry up. Jerry's leg is then bandaged, and the group then continue through the cave. Cut back to the Whisperer camp, and Alpha is waiting, and Beta comes back to inform her that Gamma has not returned. Alpha then says that she must have been the spy. Beta originally defends Gamma, saying that it must be Negan, but Alpha says it can't be and calls Negan over and asks how did he know. Negan says he used to have a group of his own, and it all fell apart because of one of his own men called Dwight that he trusted completely betrayed him, and says that it's always the ones closest to you that you have to watch. Alpha has heard enough and turns to Beta and orders him to cross the border and to bring back Gamma so she can kill her. Beta then walks off, and Alpha takes a moment to congratulate Negan and then offers him the title of Gamma when Beta returns. Back in the cave, and Daryl and Jesus continue to lead the group. Walkers seem to start to get louder, and it seems like maybe they are being closed in by walkers. The group then find a tunnel that leads up. Everyone stops as they have found an exit, but Jesus and Daryl look at each other worried. They are worried that Jerry might not be able to fit in. Jerry then collapses and Aaron calls for everyone to come back. Yumiko then catches up to the group and tells them that the walkers are coming and they don't have much time. Daryl thanks her for watching and tells everyone that they have 5 minutes. Yumiko and Kelly keep watching as Aaron and Carl and Jesus check on Jerry and his bite. Daryl then takes a moment to breathe as Connie goes over and talks to him. She tells Daryl that he's going to get everyone out and he does not need to watch Carl. Connie then offers to keep an eye on Carl so that Daryl can focus on the escape plan. Connie then hugs Daryl, and Daryl goes over to Jerry and Jesus to tell them about the tunnel and his concerns. Jerry then jokes about how the situation just keeps getting worse and comments to everyone if they think there are any fat whisperers. Carl then checks the bite again and then checks Jerry's head. Jerry is starting to run a pretty high fever. Yumiko then calls out to Daryl that they need to get going and the walkers are coming. Everyone then gets up and gets ready to go through the tunnel. Daryl goes first, and then Connie, Kelly and Carl. Jesus and Aaron with Yumiko try to get Jerry in, but he refuses and tells him he knows how bad it is and to leave him. Jesus refuses and tries to force Jerry to climb, but Jerry pushes him away. Jesus then orders Jerry to climb or they are all staying. Aaron and Yumiko then back up Jesus. Jerry, not wanting them to die, agrees, but only if he gets to go last. Jesus agrees and they all start to climb. Jerry then enters finally and the walkers are closing in. As the group are climbing up, Jerry starts to feel lightheaded and slows down. Jesus, who is in front of him, tries to keep Jerry moving by motivating him to do it for his children and Nabila. The walkers start to get louder and Jerry looks back and sees that the variants are now climbing up. Jerry then screams as everyone starts to go double speed. One by one the group get out on the other end, but then Jerry starts to get stuck near the exit. Daryl tries to go back in and grab Jerry, but he will not move. The walkers get to Jerry and start pulling him and biting his legs. Jerry then releases a scream as he is now fully stuck. Jerry realises that he is not going to get out alive and starts to beg Daryl to kill him. Jerry then starts to be pulled back by the walkers and Daryl gets pulled with him as he refuses to leave and give up on Jerry. Aaron sees how bad the situation is getting and grabs the gun off Carl, pulls Daryl out of the hole and then says he is sorry to Jerry and then shoots Jerry, putting him out of his misery. Daryl then goes off at Aaron, shouting at him for killing Jerry, and Jesus has to step in and stops him and tells Daryl that there's nothing he could have been done and killing him was the merciful thing to do. Daryl is furious and then walks off while Aaron is reassured by Jesus that he did the right thing. The group then get to a ledge where they see the walkers below and snake along the side and finally find an exit. Once on the other side, they see an old mine and they find the entrance, but it is collapsed. Aaron looks around and tells everyone that they can get out of here if they're able to lift the rubble. And Kelly notices a box and finds some dynamite in it. Daryl quickly steps over and tells her to put it back, and it could be unstable. Aaron and Jesus then hold up the rubble while Kelly and Yumiko start digging. After a while, Kelly finds the light and the group are able to dig out. Everyone then starts to get ready to leave, but before Connie goes, she realises that Carl is missing and the dynamite is gone too. Cut to Carl over the horde, trying to plant the dynamite and destroy the cave. Carl then loses his footing and falls and hangs on to the end for dear life. Daryl and Connie then come over and they try and help him up, but Carl refuses and tries to reach for the dynamite. He slips further but manages to light the fuse. Daryl then pulls Carl up and the three then run to the exit. However, the dynamite goes off faster than expected and the cave starts closing in. Everyone is now out at this point and Daryl has to hold the beam so Carl can get out. But before Connie gets there, the roof collapses on her and Daryl is forced to leave without her. On the surface, Carl realises what he has done and tries to apologise to Daryl. Carl says, "I know you two were close and I did not mean this to happen." Everyone else is in shock over the events of today while Daryl tries to dig for Connie. Carl then gets closer and Daryl has had enough and turns around and starts punching Carl and knocks him down. Daryl then gets on top and starts to strangle Carl and Carl is close to death by the time Aaron pulls Daryl off Carl. Daryl then walks off into the woods, leaving the rest of the group to get ready to head home. Back at Alexandria, and Gabriel is in the infirmary with Laura and Dante, and they are talking about Sadiq and how he died. Dante tells them that he must have committed suicide, and then he shows Sadiq's wrists, which have been cut. Dante plays up being hurt by this, and then tells them that Sadiq was having problems, but he didn't know they were this bad. Gabriel looks at the body and notices the bruising on the neck, and Dante says it must have been from Laura or Scott. Gabriel, however, was not convinced, as the bruising looks older than the cuts. Gabriel then leaves as everyone starts to talk about the new visitor at the gates. End of episode. Episode 7 starts with Gabriel going to the gate to find Gamma. She removes her mask and warns everyone about the group in trouble. However, Gabriel is suspicious of her, and Gamma has to reveal her relation to the baby at the hilltop to try and gain their trust. Gabriel has none of it though, and orders her to the cell. Cut over to Daryl in the woods, and he's trying to get back into the cave to save Connie. He is at the entrance, and he watches Whisperers come out the entrance, and them leading the walkers out. His mission then changes when he sees Alpha walk out, and in her hand is Connie's sling. Daryl instead decides to follow Alpha, thinking that she has killed Connie. Back in the cell, and Gamma is waiting until Gabriel walks in. He tells her that he can tell when people are lying, and her story pulls all of the right heartstrings. Gamma tells him that it was true and talks about how she had to kill her sister for Alpha, and breaks down. Gabriel then realizes that she was not lying and brings out a map. Gabriel says he is trusting her, and if her cave story comes true, she will be able to see her nephew. Gamma then points out the cave and the location where the Whisperers left the walkers, and asks if she could be called Mary, not Gamma. Gabriel then asks Laura to go and get Dante after seeing Mary's hand injury. Cut back to Alpha, and she feels something is off and starts looking around. Then suddenly Daryl attacks, killing 2 of her men, and Daryl then charges Alpha. Daryl manages to cut Alpha's face, but Alpha almost blinds Daryl with a hit of the back of her gun. Daryl manages to stab Alpha again in the shoulder and asks her what did she do with Connie and where is she. Walkers then attack, and Daryl's focus changes to them. Alpha takes this chance to stab Daryl in the back and stabs him in the leg before running away, grabbing her gun, forcing Daryl to retreat. Cut back to Alexandria, and Dante walks in and sees Gamma in the cell. He is shocked and stumbles a little, but tries to play it off. Gabriel then introduces Dante to Mary, and Dante sheepishly goes in to work on cleaning her hand. Tension builds in the room as Dante acts out of character, purely focusing on the task, as Mary looks at Dante, puzzled that she knows him but can't recall where from. Mary keeps trying to ask Dante questions, and Dante responds as little as possible, and once he is finished cleaning up Mary's hand, Dante quickly excuses himself, saying he has other patients. Once Dante is gone, Mary tells Gabriel that she thinks Dante might be a Whisperer spy. She swears that she knows him and she has heard his voice before, but she can't really pinpoint it. Gabriel is a little dismissive, but did notice the strange way Dante acted as soon as he entered the cell. Gabriel then leaves Mary and later sees Dante and asks him what's happened to see if Dante can relieve or confirm his suspicions. Dante tells Gabriel the reason he's acting strange is because of Sadiq's death, and talks about how he did not think losing a friend will affect him this bad after everything that's happened in this world. Gabriel then turns sympathetic, and Dante says that she is probably lying and trying to break us down from the inside and divide us. Nothing she has said has come true, and it is very convenient as soon as one of us dies, she appears up at our gate. With this response, Gabriel is relieved, and the claims Mary has have been dropped, and Dante is let to go back to work. Back with Daryl, and he's trying to run away from Alpha while bleeding out. He gets to a run-down warehouse and tries to hide, but Alpha follows his blood, and she is not far behind and sits next to the entrance while sending walkers in. Alpha waits at the only entrance while Daryl is soon surrounded, and he is forced to pull out the knife from his leg and to kill the walkers. Daryl then bleeds out even faster, and once all the walkers are dead, Daryl then tries to escape, but Alpha shoots at him, pinning him down. Daryl now has extreme blood loss and begins to black out. Back in Alexandria, and Gabriel starts to send off a team to look for the missing group, but stays behind as he needs to set up a plan for Sadiq's funeral. Dante volunteers to help Gabriel, and the two spend a couple of hours digging the grave and preparing a little eulogy for Sadiq. Once the two have got everything ready for the funeral the next day, Gabriel gets ready to leave the church, but Dante asks him to stay for a while and opens up about his past and how grateful that he is to be able to live in Alexandria. Dante does not mention that he's a Whisperer, but he talks about his life before was not really a life worth living. It was just running from place to place and barely being able to survive, and now he is able to do what he loves, and he's able to help people and be a part of something more. Gabriel says to Dante that they are lucky to have him and that he will make Sadiq proud. Dante says thank you as Gabriel leaves. He asks if Dante's coming with, and Dante says no, he wants a couple more minutes in the church. Once Gabriel is gone and Dante's alone, he goes over to Sadiq's body and apologizes and says that he will try and make up for what he has done. After a couple minutes, Dante sits down and he notices out in the graveyard one of the graves start to move. Dante watches through the window as Beta emerges from the grave and comes over and enters the church. Dante is stunned to see Beta inside the walls of Alexandria, and as Beta walks towards him getting ready to kill him, Dante gets on his knees and greets Beta, telling him that he is the spy. Beta then asks where is Gamma, and Dante gives him the location. Beta then orders Dante to head to the infirmary and to take out the sick. Dante is then given a mask and is forced to face being a whisperer yet again. Both men leave the church to go on their respective missions. Beta heads to a nearby house and kills a family mercilessly while they get ready for bed. While they're all dead, he sits and waits for them all to turn, while Dante heads to the infirmary to go and take out the sick. For some reason, Dante starts to struggle with this plan, and he comments to himself how this was all really easy only a couple days ago, and now he is struggling to kill people while they sleep. Dante gets through it though, and manages to take out a good majority of the people. However, he is stopped when he hears someone wake up. He turns around and sees a young boy who's woken up. He asks Dante what is he doing, and Dante tells him that they died and he is making sure they don't come back. Dante then takes the child out to the infirmary, leaving the dead to turn. While Gabriel is walking back home, he walks past the cell and Mary summons him over. She tells him that Alpha will be coming for her and she does not have much time. She asks if the people have returned yet, and Gabriel tells her not yet. Mary starts to act very worried, and Gabriel tells her is she regretting her choice. She says no, but she knows that they will be coming for her. Gabriel tries to reassure her before going home. Later that night, and the dead start to reanimate, and in the infirmary screams echo out, as only some were killed by Dante. Beta's plan has been slightly ruined by Dante, however he still uses this moment of chaos as a distraction to try and go for Gamma. As the screams get louder and continue through Alexandria, Gabriel is awoken up and looks out the window to see walkers roaming the streets, and that Mary was right and the Whisperers were coming for her. Beta gets to the cell and tells Gamma that she betrayed Alpha. Gamma then backs into the corner as much as she can, but Beta grabs her and pulls her out. Once outside, he runs to Gabriel, Laura, and some other of Daryl's saviours. Beta is then surrounded and forced to give up Gamma. Gabriel orders her into the house and a fight breaks out. Beta immediately takes out two men with his knives, while Gabriel tries to get a clean shot, but can't. Once he gets a shot, Beta uses a body as a human shield, and it knocks him back, and Beta starts to be surrounded by Gabriel, Laura, and the two remaining survivors. Beta then throws the body at Gabriel and then picks up the shotgun, killing one of the other survivors, and then uses the shotgun as a club to kill another. Laura then finally tries to stab Beta from behind, but he turns around, picks her up, and slams her against the ground, breaking her neck and killing her. Beta, then thinking everyone else is dead, then goes into the building after Gamma. At this point, the fighters that Gabriel sent out return and start to clear off the walkers. Beta enters the household and is able to find Gamma. He turns around and gets ready to leave, but Gabriel is in the way again. Beta then prepares to fight Gabriel, but walkers swarm in and Gabriel is pulled into a side room by Dante. Beta uses these walkers to help him get back to the graveyard, and him and Gamma escape Alexandria. The remaining walkers are killed off by the Alexandrians, and Dante is captured by Gabriel. Cut to Alpha waiting for Daryl. Both are bleeding out and are too weak to move. They start talking about death and how she is embracing death, where Daryl is clinging to life. Daryl then brings up Lydia, and this irritates Alpha. She musters up all her strength to go over and attack Daryl. The two get into a very half-assed fight before Alpha's body gives in and she falls next to Daryl. The two at this point are unable to move. Alpha then sees Lydia and is overjoyed. Lydia came back for her, but Lydia then goes over and helps Daryl. She then drags Daryl out, and Alpha is filled with rage before passing out. Cut over to Alexandria, and it is now the morning, and Dante is in the cell. Gabriel walks in and talks to Dante. Dante admits that he was the Whisperer, and that he was the one that poisoned people and the one that killed Sadiq. Gabriel tells him that he knows, and it all makes sense now. Dante tells Gabriel that living amongst them changed him, and that all he really needs to do to defeat the Whisperers is to show them this way of life. And like Dante, like Gamma, people will change sides. Gabriel doesn't speak. He doesn't do anything. He lets Dante talk about how seeing the life inside Alexandria has changed him, how he's grown to care about this community, and that he wants forgiveness. He wants to no longer be a whisperer and be a changed man. Gabriel then walks into the cell, puts Dante against the wall, and finally speaks. He tells Dante that he doesn't care, and then starts stabbing Dante over and over again until he collapses dead on the floor. Gabriel then leaves the room calmly, like nothing happened. The episode ends with the Whisperers finding Alpha and treating her wounds. Alpha tells them how she is now strong and how it is time to send the Horde over. She then starts chanting that she is free with the other Whisperers. Episode 8 begins with Andrea and Virgil getting to the island. The two disembark the boat and go inland. Andrea follows Virgil, who seems a little more sketchy now that they're here. While walking towards a building, Andrea and Virgil walk past some open graves. Andrea stops Virgil, but he does not seem to acknowledge they exist. Andrea at this point has had enough and points her gun at Virgil and demands that he explains. Virgil begs Andrea to help him and his family that is trapped in this building filled with walkers, and the guns are there too. Andrea, realising that she has come this far, agrees to follow a little more just to help Virgil get into the building. Once at the building, Andrea looks into the window and sees that it is swarmed with walkers, more than she thought there would be. At this point, Andrea realises that his family is guaranteed to already be dead, and she starts to pity him and tells Virgil that she will clear it for him and they can put his family to rest. The two then enter through a window and start to easily clear the building. Andrea killing the walkers while Virgil is locking them in rooms and making sure they don't get attacked from behind. The two get to a room where Virgil tells Andrea that his family is just in there. As she opens the door, she sees a walker version of Virgil's wife and daughter. Virgil is rejoiced to see them and starts to go over to go and embrace his walker family. Andrea realises that Virgil is in danger and he is not seeing them as walkers, and she is forced to put them both down. Virgil reacts to Andrea like she has just killed his family and attacks Andrea, knocking her out. Cut over to the Whisperer camp where Negan and Alpha are awaiting Beta's return while Alpha confides in Negan about what happened. She tells Negan to make her strong and hands him a stick. Negan is hesitant at first but does what Alpha says and starts whipping her arm. Beta then returns with Gamma and brings Gamma to Alpha. Alpha tells Beta and the Whisperers to prepare for the naming ceremony. Gamma starts to panic after hearing this and tries to escape but is subdued by a couple of Whisperers. Beta asks who will become the new Gamma, and Alpha tells Beta it will be Negan. Beta is against this and Negan smiles and cracks a joke. Beta then squares up to Negan and prepares to attack him before Alpha steps in and reminds him that he is the Beta and she is the Alpha, and he must do what she says. Beta backs off and apologises for forgetting his place and quickly leaves. Later, the ceremony begins. Whisperers gather around Alpha and Beta as they stand next to a tied up Gamma. Her mask is then removed by Alpha and thrown into a fire, and Beta then cuts her forehead and blood drains down her face. Walkers are then brought in as Gamma starts to struggle. She starts to scream when the walkers start to eat her. The Whisperers then start chanting until Gamma's screams go silent and she dies. Negan is then brought forward from the crowd and kneels before Gamma. She tells Negan that he will now be named Gamma and Negan no more. Beta then removes what's left of Gamma's face and it is attached to Negan's Whisperer mask. The Whisperers then chant Gamma as Beta stands defiant and Alpha notices. She then orders him to prepare the Horde to cross before reminding him who is the Alpha and that he seems to be forgetting that a lot lately. Back on the island, and it's now been a couple of days. Andrea is now weak and has been going in and out of consciousness a lot and hallucinating Rick and what her life would have been like if she never met him and if she was one of Negan's saviours. She is then brought back to reality when Virgil opens a door and a man is thrown into the cell. This man looks over to Andrea, recognises her and calls her name. Andrea looks up and sees Rick. She is overjoyed, but it was her hallucination. The man corrects her and she realises it was actually Alden. Alden then asks what happened to Rick. Andrea, now fully in the room, tears up and explains what happened and how the Whisperer War is going and that Rick sacrificed himself. Andrea then remembers Maggie and asks if she is okay. Alden says the last time he saw her she was fine but they were on the run. They made a new group called Meridian, but they were raided and kicked out. They were being chased and Alden was separated, and he ended up here before being attacked by that crazy man. Andrea tells him that he doesn't know the half of it, and he has lost his family and just seems to have snapped. The two then start to try and plan a way out and to get back to Maggie. Sometime later, and Alden is banging on the door, screaming for Virgil to come as Andrea is unwell. Virgil comes to go check on Andrea and she lays on the floor lifeless. Virgil gets closer and she enacts her plan and strikes out at Virgil. Alden tries to attack him from the side, but Virgil manages to shake off Alden and cuts him before accidentally kicking Andrea in the head. He escapes out of the room. Alden then runs over to Andrea, who is now concussed. He tries to help her and gives her some water and drinks some himself. The two then start to hallucinate. Cut over to Alpha and the Whisperers move in the horde and preparing for the attack on Hilltop. Negan goes to Alpha to try and talk to her about maybe not killing everyone, but to try and force them to become Whisperers. Alpha seems to respond to this idea and tells Negan to talk about this more. Back on the island, and it has been hours. Alden and Andrea are starting to recover from the hallucinations once again, and they notice Virgil has been watching them, and he seems scared and hurt. Virgil then comes into the room holding a gun, and then threatens Alden to talk about who the other man is. Alden is confused at first, but Virgil mentions that the man is wearing a mask. Alden's eyes then widen as he realises that he was followed to the island. Virgil orders Alden and Andrea to make him go away, and Andrea struggles to her feet and attacks Virgil and manages to get the gun off him. Andrea then orders Virgil to tell him where the other guns are, and Virgil explains that it was a lie and all the guns that he had on him he found at the mainland. Andrea helps up Alden and prepares to leave, but Alden stops Andrea and tells her that if this is a Reaper, they have to kill him now or they will continue to be followed and put other people at risk. Andrea then asks Virgil what has he got as weapons, and Virgil responds that the man had a machine gun. Andrea then looks down the pistol and checks and realises that it is empty. Andrea then tells Virgil and Alden that they are screwed and that they need to band together to have any chance of surviving. Virgil then breaks down and says that he was too scared and cowardly to save his family and he could not even put them to rest. How can he fight now? Andrea's rage for Virgil is then put to a side for one moment as she realises how much pain and grief he is in. Andrea talks about her loss too and how much pain she was in, but she remembers that he will always be a part of her. And Virgil needs to remember that his family will always be a part of him, and he needs to fight for the memory of them. Virgil reaches into his pocket and tries to take more drugs to see his family again, but Andrea stops him and tells him that that is not them, and that they would want him to move on. Andrea then helps Virgil up and tells him that he can do this, and the three then come up with a plan to lure the Reaper into the building and then attack him from behind. Cut to the Reaper entering the building wearing a skull mask. The Reaper searches room to room and finds a blood trail that leads to Virgil in this empty room. He enters the room and Andrea and Alden are hiding by the door and attack him from behind. The Reaper manages to fight them off and Alden is able to get the gun off the Reaper, but it was knocked out of reach. The Reaper then stabs Alden and then says he's been marked by Pope. He then turns around, picks up Andrea and throws her into the wall and then turns back to Alden. While this is happening, Virgil goes for the gun and the Reaper sees and throws knives into his back. Virgil manages to get the gun, turns around and fires it into the Reaper. The Reaper falls to the floor and the battle was almost over. But then he laughs and taunts Alden, saying that they are coming. Pins are then pulled on his vest and Alden turns to try and grab Andrea and run, but Virgil gets up and jumps on the Reaper, finally having a moment of clarity and sacrificing himself. The grenades then go off, killing both Virgil and the Reaper. Later, Andrea and Alden bury both Virgil and his family, put him to rest before leaving the island to go off and find Maggie. The episode ends with a cut to the trees outside Hilltop, and the Whisperers have arrived. Episode 9 starts with Jesus leading the collective forces towards the Whisperers and Walkers. The groups clash as Jesus enacts the training and they try to tunnel the Walkers along the outer walls and push them into the pits. Cut over to Alpha's forces with Alpha, Negan and Beta with Whisperers launching tree sap into the sky, and it lands on survivors, Walkers and inside of the Hilltop. Negan alongside other Whisperers then fires flaming arrows and ignites the sap, burning the walkers, some of the survivors, and when Daryl turns to look back, Hilltop is burning. We then cut back to a couple days before the battle, and we see Jesus, Aaron, Yumiko, Kelly, Carl, and Daryl, who's unconscious, plus Lydia, arrive at the Hilltop. Luke, Jules, and Jerry's wife Nabila, with Ezekiel, greet them at the door. But they see how badly things went, and Luke runs to Yumiko and Kelly, asking where is Connie, but the two are speechless and just hug Luke. Then Jesus goes over to Nabila and Ezekiel and tells them that Jerry is gone. Jesus tries to apologize, but Nabila is hysterical. Ezekiel shares in her grief, and they are both heartbroken by the news. Ezekiel tries to comfort Nabila as best he can, and the two go off to go and tell Jerry's children that their father is not coming home. Both Carl and Daryl are rushed to the infirmary, and Lydia does not leave Daryl's side. Now that it is only Jesus and Aaron, Jesus almost collapses from the stress and fatigue. Aaron notices and grabs to steady him, and suggests that they should go rest in the house. Cut to the infirmary, and Daryl is rushed in and prepared for surgery to stop the bleeding. What Lydia did worked for now, but was not a proper solution for Daryl's wounds. Judith and Michonne watch this happen, and then Carl comes in, bloody and bruised. Michonne goes over to Carl and asks him what happened, and helps to clean him up. Carl, however, does not really talk to Michonne and does not look her in the eye. All he does is stare over at the state Daryl is in. Michonne asks if anyone else is hurt, and Carl tells her that yes, Jerry and Connie are both gone because of him. Michonne then finishes cleaning up Carl's wounds and asks if he would spend some time with Judith as she really misses him, but Carl just leaves, ignoring Michonne. The next day, Eugene is talking over the radio, and the two are talking about their favourite songs. Eugene starts to get a little too comfortable though, and almost reveals the location of Hilltop, as he mentions that he is in the state of Virginia before going silent. After a couple moments, Stephanie then speaks again and says that they must be close, and asks if Eugene is still there. Eugene then responds, and then expresses his desire to meet her face to face. He tells her that she could pick a location, and he could be there, and she could hide, and if she does not like the cut of his gist, she can just leave and he will never know she was there. She agrees and lets Eugene know that she will go talk to the others. Outside, Michonne is eating with Judith and Ezekiel, and she sees Carl packing. She goes over to Carl and tries to talk to him, but he ignores her and leaves the gate. She then goes back and talks to Ezekiel, and Ezekiel asks what is wrong. Michonne simply says, Carl. Ezekiel then volunteers to go and talk to Carl, or at least follow him outside of the gates. Michonne asks if he is sure and if he is up to it after Jerry, but Ezekiel says yes. Ezekiel then leaves to try and catch up with Carl. Sometime later, and Carl is stopping by a ravine to get some water. Ezekiel then walks on by, and the two just sit there for a moment, silent, not talking. Ezekiel then breaks the silence and says to Carl, I forgive you. Carl then turns to look at Ezekiel, and Ezekiel continues with, it was not your fault. Everyone agreed to go on that mission, and what happened was bad, but it was a risk everyone was willing to take. Every time we walk out of those gates, we are accepting the risk that we might not ever return. Ezekiel tells Carl that you have two paths ahead of you now. The first one is that you continue to make rash and dangerous decisions that put other people in danger, and you will end up alone with no one left to love you. Or you can do the second path, which is the harder one, and that is to focus on what you have left and to work on building a new life with new loved ones. Let go of what is driving you at the moment and instead protect. Ezekiel tells Carl that I was in the same situation not so long ago, but Andrea helped me to focus on what was left and not what was lost. I lost my community, my son, my health, and now my best friend, but yet I smile and keep moving forwards and focusing on what I have left, the people and Michonne. Ezekiel then continues and tells Carl that he is at a point where he has to choose which path he wants to continue down, because if he continues down his current path, Jerry and Connie will not be the last ones to die, and maybe next time it will be Judith or Andrea. Ezekiel then gets up and leaves Carl to give him time to think. Back at Hilltop, and Daryl finally wakes up in the infirmary. He looks around confused and sees Lydia waiting by his bedside. She explains that she found him clinging to life and she got him back to the Hilltop, and it's been a couple of days. Daryl tries to get up but is stopped by the doctor. Daryl pushes his way past, and him and both Lydia leave the infirmary to see Jesus and everyone working and preparing for the Whisper attack at any minute. Over by the house, Judith is with Carl and Michonne, and she notices Daryl and then runs over to greet him. Judith then gives Daryl his vest back, which she has repaired the wing on the back. She asks if he likes it, and he says that he loves it and hugs her. Michonne then comes over and expresses joy in his recovery. However, Carl stays back, and Daryl and Karen only glance at each other, and no words are exchanged. Over by the walls, Jesus and Aaron are overseeing the preparations, and then the pair notice rats start to pour out of the woods. Jesus realizes that a horde is near and calls for everyone to get in position. Cut over to Eugene talking over the radio to Stephanie. He then hears the sirens and tells her what is going to happen, and that he hopefully will be able to radio her afterwards. Just before he goes though, Stephanie tells him to wait and gives him the meeting place of the train station in West Virginia. Eugene says it is a date and wish him good luck before leaving. Eugene then grabs his things and runs down the stairs past Daryl, who is finishing getting ready. Daryl grabs his crossbow and is about to exit before he sees Ezekiel looking in the mirror. Ezekiel is thinking about his conversation with Carl, and he removes his neckerchief. Daryl sees what is on his neck and asks if he is okay. Ezekiel tells Daryl no, he has cancer and he will not be okay, but right now he is. Daryl then asks Ezekiel if he can look after the children before leaving to join everyone at the gate. The episode then loops back to the start with Jesus leading everyone to the battle and trying to tunnel the walkers, while Alpha and the Whisperers launch tree sap into the sky and light the horde and Hilltop on fire. Chaos begins as the Whisperers were way more prepared for Jesus' plan as they fought. The walkers close in and push the survivors back, and Jesus orders everyone to stick to the plan. Variant walkers then start climbing the walls and attacking, making the situation so much more worse. More walkers then come from the other side of the hilltop, surrounding the community. Daryl takes a group and breaks off to try and protect the back. Arrows then rain down from the sky, killing both survivors and walkers. Carl and Michonne both look back at the hilltop to see that the variant walkers are now inside of the walls. They break away from Jesus' group to try and save and evacuate as many people as possible, but most importantly to make sure the children make it out alive. Once inside, they see how bad the situation really is, and they see that Ezekiel is already at work trying to get people to the tunnels, but walkers continue to climb over the walls and are surrounding unarmed hilltoppers. The pair try and clear out as many walkers as possible and make their way to Ezekiel. However, one walker ends up grabbing Carl and then hits him in the head with a rock. Carl falls to the floor and the screen goes black. End of episode. Episode 10 picks up right where episode 9 ends, with Carl disorientated trying to get the walker off him. He is then saved by Michonne, who kills the walker and helps Carl up to his feet. The survivors seem to be losing the battle, and Carl and Michonne try and get to the tunnel, but then they are attacked by more walkers and separated. The last thing Carl sees is Michonne getting swarmed and being stabbed in the gut by a Whisperer. The walls then collapse, crushing many of the survivors, and more walkers swarm in. The survivors have lost the battle, and the plan changes from protecting Hilltop to escaping. Jesus and his survivors then focus on punching a hole through the horde to escape through. Cut to Alpha, Beta and Negan watching on, and Beta asks if they should let them run or cut them off. Alpha orders them to do nothing, listening to Negan's advice. Jump to the morning and the battle is over. The Whisperers have won and now are cleaning up all the walkers. Negan then kills a dying man and is told off by Alpha. Negan tries to get Alpha to celebrate, but she does not accept the victory because she does not have Lydia. Beta tells Alpha that she is not amongst the dead and will not stop looking for her. Beta then orders Negan to go and clear up the walkers. While gathering the walkers, Negan keeps failing and ends up being frustrated and starts to kill them. He then sees an injured Lydia running away from the site. Negan goes to chase her down, but Beta walks over and tells him to back down and he will go after her himself. Negan does not listen though and tries to get to Lydia before Beta does. He then runs into Aaron with an unconscious Luke. He tries to de-escalate the situation, but Aaron wants blood for what happened. Negan is forced to call for walkers, and as the walkers surround Aaron and Luke, Negan runs off and escapes into the woods.
Cut to Lydia, who has ran into Kelly and some of the other survivors, like Diane. The group seem dismissive of her, and some even blame her for the battle, but Kelly helps her. Walkers then come from all directions, and the group hear whispers. They try to run, but they see Beta is after them. Diane then realises that they must stand up and fight. She orders Kelly and Lydia to run, while everyone else stays behind. The fight begins, and Beta is hit in the chest with 3 arrows. We then cut over to Lydia and Kelly as they find a car to hide in. Back with Beta, and everyone is now dead. One survivor is left clinging to life. She gets up and lunges at Beta and rips off the side of his mask before he plunges a knife into her throat. He then pulls the arrows out of his chest before turning around. The Whisperers then get a look at his face, and one says, "I know who you are." Beta then starts to kill all of the Whisperers. One is left, and he pleads for Beta to let him live, and he will not say anything. However, Beta just kills him anyway and does not accept his offer. Once he's killed everyone, he then gathers himself and then continues on to look for Lydia. Back at the car where Kelly and Lydia are hiding, the door then swings open. They expect to see Beta, but it is Negan instead. Lydia is relieved for a second, but panics when she realises that he is there to take her away. Lydia is then grabbed by Negan and pulled out of the car. Kelly tries to stop them, but Negan tells Beta is coming. Kelly still tries to save Lydia, but Lydia tells her to run and accepts her fate. Cut to Carl walking through what is left of the survivors hiding in the woods. He walks past Eugene, who is distressed that the radio has now been broken, and he sees a family that has been torn apart, grieving for the loss of their children. Carl continues to look, but no Judith. It looks like that only a handful of children managed to make it out alive. Carl, now defeated, sits on a log, defeated and believing Judith is now dead. A walker then comes up from the ground and tries to grab Carl. He knocks it away, but does not move. Carl then decides to let the walker bite him, not wanting to go on anymore now that Judith is gone. However, before the walker bites him, Eugene stops him and kills the walker. Eugene then sits next to Carl, and Carl vents about failing and getting people killed, and now everyone hates him. Eugene tells Carl he knows how that feels, but he cannot give up hope. People are still missing, and Judith could still be out there somewhere. Daryl and Jesus, with more survivors, then turn up at the meeting point, but still no Judith. Parents start to cry out as most of the children are still missing. Other characters such as Luke, Aaron, Kelly, Ezekiel, Michonne, and Earl are also missing. Jesus tries to calm everyone down and tells them that maybe Ezekiel has taken the children someplace else for safety. Jesus, Daryl, and Carl then decide to go back to the hilltop to try and find the children. Cut over to Earl looking out of a window as they are hiding inside a building surrounded by walkers. Judith asks if they are coming, and Earl says yes. Earl then takes Judith into the other room where most of the other children are, plus an injured Michonne. Earl tries to treat Michonne's wounds with the help of Judith to apply pressure and to try and stop the bleeding. Eventually Michonne stops bleeding, and Earl, looking very sickly, stumbles out of the room. Cut to Jesus, Daryl, and Carl at Hilltop's rubble, looking for any signs of the children. The group then see movement under one of the fallen walls. They pick it up and they find Ezekiel. Daryl asks what happened, and Ezekiel tells them that Earl got Michonne and the kids through the tunnel before it collapsed. Cut back to the hut, and Earl is looking out the window at the walkers. He realises that he's not going to be able to leave the building. He looks down at his arm, and a bite is revealed. He then turns around and picks up a hammer and a spike and starts putting it through a table to try and make sure he does not turn. Once the spike is through the table, he puts it back up and positions himself over. However, he is too weak and falls to the floor, missing the spike. Later, while everyone is resting, Michonne is telling all the children about a story. One child asks for a drink and Michonne tries to get it, but Judith stops her and goes off herself. Judith then enters the room where Earl was earlier to see Earl stand in the corner. Judith walks closer and asks if he is okay. Earl then turns around and starts attacking her. Judith screams for help and Michonne gets up and starts rushing into the room, causing herself to start bleeding again. Once in the room, she sees that Earl is trying to bite Judith, and without thinking, Michonne grabs Earl to save Judith.
The Walker Earl is thrown against the wall and Judith is told to run. Michonne tries to go for the spike in the table, but Earl manages to grab her and starts attacking her. The Walker manages to overpower Michonne and bites her on the shoulder before Michonne is able to throw Earl into the table and the spike impales his head. Michonne then rushes over to Judith, hugging her and asking if she is okay. Judith then says she is sorry and points out the bite on her shoulder. Michonne starts to panic, but quickly accepts her fate and only focuses on the fact that she was able to save the children. Later, Carl, Dara, Ezekiel, and Jesus get to the hut and clear off the walkers. Once they've cleared, they open the door and the children run out. Jesus makes sure that the children are okay and Carl rushes in to see Judith and Michonne sitting in the corner. He runs over to Judith and hugs her and tells her that he thought that he lost her and he's overjoyed to see her again. Judith then tells Carl what happened and Carl calls out for Ezekiel to come in and see Michonne. Ezekiel rushes in as Daryl watches by the door. Michonne tells everyone that she is okay and that she was able to protect the children, and that is all that matters. Ezekiel tries to get her up, but Michonne stops him and says that she will turn soon. Ezekiel, now in tears, keeps trying to convince her to come, but she will not change her mind. It takes Judith to try and convince Michonne to go so that she does not die alone and join the Whisperer horde. The group then head back to the meeting point and Michonne gets to see the children reunite with their families. Judith tells Michonne that without her none of this would happen and that she has saved all of them. Ezekiel and Carl help Michonne into the building and get her to the bed. Ezekiel and Judith sit by Michonne's side and Ezekiel starts to cry again. Michonne tells him to not cry and to be happy with the time that they had together. She is okay with dying because she will be able to see Henry and her son again. Michonne then reaches out and holds Ezekiel's hand and tells him to be strong for her, and he has a lot more to do and to make her proud to be his queen. Judith then says thank you to Michonne and hugs her one last time. Michonne then passes away soon after. Later, as everyone else is packing up what is left to head back to Alexandria, Eugene tells everyone about the meeting point he has set up and tells everyone he knows it's a bad time, but he has to go and is sorry for leaving at the worst time. Eugene tries to tell everyone that he thinks they can help and he can go there, get help and be right back. Daryl says that it's a bad idea, but Jesus says that he trusts Eugene, and if Eugene thinks he should go, he should go. Ezekiel then speaks up and agrees with Jesus and volunteers to go along. Eugene asks if he is sure after Michonne's death, and Ezekiel says yes, if it can help, we have to try, and Michonne would not want him to mope around. Yumiko also volunteers to go, and the three get ready to set off. Before they go, Ezekiel asks Judith for a favour. He asks if she can make sure that Michonne gets a proper send-off at Alexandria, as he can't do it himself. Judith agrees that he will do that for her, and Ezekiel thanks her. The episode ends with the three leaving, and that is where we will leave it today. So make sure to like and subscribe to be notified for when the conclusion of season 10 comes out. Hopefully the wait will not be too long for the end of the Whisperer arc. But this is it for me today, so make sure to like and subscribe to keep up with all things Walking Dead universe and to be around for when part 3 comes out. So goodbye, peace out, and I'll see you in my next video.